What would you say if I were to tell you that your specific residential zip code is actually the primary reason why your internal biological battery feels so completely drained and exhausted? And it's not simply because of the heavy rain, or the biting cold, or even the experience of living in a large city that is full of tall towers or concrete buildings. It's because of a lie you've accepted, as if it were an unchangeable truth. You see, the outdated idea that your personal health is a helpless slave to the vast sky above you and the immediate environment around you is actually a complete and total falsehood. And in this, there is a kind of collective hypnosis, a geographic tyranny that has made us believe that our biology truly depends on meteorological luck. They've successfully sold us on this particular idea, and it seems we've bought into it without even a single word of protest. That you are living your life, or rather, that we are all living our lives in this way. In the grayness of Mexico City, or under the rain in London, or beneath the leaden sky of Oslo, and that therefore you are naturally condemned to feel fatigue, chronic fatigue, inflammation, and a survival level voltage. They've made us believe that vibrant health is almost like a reserved geographic luxury, only for those who can afford to live in areas with abundant sunshine by the sea or in the countryside, with plenty of vegetation. But the truth of the situation is that they are completely mistaken. And today, I'm going to show you exactly why that is, armed with the fundamental laws of physics in hand. You see, your incredible human body is not just a simple passive thermometer that merely rises and falls with the surrounding environment. It is, in fact, a highly complex and sophisticated biological machine. This is an extraordinarily sophisticated, highly precise thermal and electrical machine, which has been meticulously engineered and designed specifically to obey the complex universal laws of quantum physics, rather than being subject to any of our common local weather laws. This is the first thing you need to understand and really get into your head. Geography itself, when viewed through a modern lens, is really just an engineering challenge to overcome, not a death sentence for your vitality. Today we're going to finally open up these heavy doors, shatter the long-standing tyranny once and for all, and I warmly invite you to embark on this transformative journey alongside me. You will learn exactly how to bring forth a brilliant and lasting light where there is currently only shadow, and how to successfully regenerate voltage where others only see dark clouds. I'm going to introduce you to the iron triangle of cellular hydration. This is the ultimate security system designed so that your cathedral can be energetically sovereign. This ensures that no matter where you live, it doesn't matter, because you will always have total peace of mind and complete independence. Whether there is snow and you're at 15 degrees below zero, or boiling concrete and you're at 40 degrees above zero. An action that is the opposite of a patient, and that's what you need to become. An action, not a patient. An action doesn't wait for the sun to come out. What an ancient creature does is activate the internal generators that evolution has given them over time, so they are fully ready to conquer any corner of the planet. Well then, I would like to warmly welcome you to this masterclass, where you will finally take back full control of your own life, biometeorology. But before we get into that, let's spend a significant amount of time taking a few moments to recap everything we have discussed. Because if we neglect to fully grasp and appreciate the core foundation, ultimately and inevitably, the whole building will collapse. And it will all completely and utterly be for absolutely nothing at all. What you do afterwards, for those of you who are just joining this series on the reconstruction of the cathedral. Let me briefly remind you of some of the latest episodes in this series, to help you have a map or to get to know the map we've drawn up so far. In video 10, we installed the mineral hardware. We talked about seaweed or simos and shilashit, but here's the key thing to remember. In this cathedral, we don't see them as simple pharmacy supplements because they provide high-purity electrolytes. These essential elements are exactly what allow your physical body to function as a complex semiconductor. And without them, you would unfortunately become nothing more than an inefficient open circuit. In this scenario, the energy would simply get stuck at one single point, and as a result, there would be absolutely no signal transmission possible. It would be exactly like having a massive 1 million watt power plant generating immense power, but having no copper wires or infrastructure at all to bring that electricity to the individual houses. In video 11, we understood that water, thank you. It shouldn't just be a puddle of liquid H2O inside you. It should be a hexagonal liquid crystal, H3O2. And we learned how to make that protective gel using pineapple, chia, aloe, and other fruits or vegetables. And that gel is your shield, your biological capacitor. It's what allows us to store the charge. But here comes the invisible enemy of every engineer, entropy, which we've already talked about several times. The second law of thermodynamics fundamentally states that everything in the universe that is currently ordered has a natural tendency to move toward a state of chaos spontaneously. And your structured water is a battery, which is constantly discharging. And you might ask me why? Well, because of the friction of life, oxidative stress, and above all, the bombardment of artificial radiation that surrounds us. And what exactly is it that holds that thick gel together with your tiny mineral wires? Remember the exclusion zone. Easy. That is the cement of your cathedral. And without this cement, the mineral bricks loosen and the water simply becomes chaotic and disordered again. And here I'm going to make a comment that might sound a bit unpleasant, but you need to understand that it's very real. Do you know why? Why do so many people take extremely expensive supplements and minerals? And yet 20 minutes later, they're urinating them out. Well, basically, it's because their cement has melted, their water network has collapsed, and their body has nowhere to physically anchor those electrolytes or those supplements that are being provided. Pay attention to this technical detail. Water in the gel state, SH3O2, has a negative charge density that is much greater than that of liquid water. If it unfortunately loses that essential internal structure, what happens is that it completely loses its natural ability to effectively retain the vital positive ions from your essential minerals. Now, you might wonder, who exactly is this culprit? The force responsible for dissolving that metaphorical cement is entropy, which I mentioned earlier. It acts as the ultimate thief of structure. And therefore, so that the cement doesn't liquefy and fail, we need a continuous and steady supply of maintenance energy to keep things stable. It's not enough to just build the battery. The important thing, as you very well know from everyday life, is being able to keep it under pressure. And that is exactly what we are going to be discussing in detail in this video today. Specifically, we are going to explore how to activate the three primary engines that work together to keep your internal biological spring fully compressed. And those three essential engines are physical pressure, the grounding of Earth, and the influence of light. But as it couldn't be any other way, let's take it step by step. I'll start by talking to you about piezoelectric pressure. You probably know how it works. A kitchen lighter, one of those that makes a click, a sharp, strong click, and when you press the button, a small hammer strikes a quartz crystal. And that mechanical pressure deforms the crystal, and due to a physical law, that deformation simply generates an instant electric spark, which is what lights the stove. Well, that is what we call piezoelectricity. This fascinating process is literally mechanical energy being converted directly into pure electricity. And it is, at the very same time, exactly the same kind of complex biological process that your own body performs every single day to function. In other words, you're like one of those kitchen lighters. Your body is a massive lighter that never runs out. Your fascia, that white, shiny tissue that envelops each of your muscles, organs, and nerves, is not simply a filling or a wrapping. No. It is a complex three-dimensional structural matrix of collagen that actually functions and behaves very much like a highly specialized liquid crystal semiconductor material. Every single time you move your body, every time you stretch your limbs, and every time you put significant pressure on your internal tissues while simply walking, what you are actually doing is clicking your own internal lighter. You're constantly producing a steady, rhythmic flow of electrons throughout your entire system. But you see, the physical movements and activities you engage in ought not to be perceived as merely a means of burning calories, because that is really a very reductive and overly simplified perspective on the complex nature of reality. Every single movement you make actually happens to induce a specific voltage in the crystalline structure of your fascia. And this is exactly where most people get it completely wrong, because they simply think walking is just moving the physical body, when in reality what you are truly doing is managing your own complex internal broadband network. As I was saying, deep inside the fascia, you'll find that the water isn't just loose or moving freely. In any case, it organizes itself, and it does so through what we call the Grotthus mechanism. To explain it more clearly to you, imagine it as if they were incredibly high-speed tunnels designed specifically for protons. And thanks to the unique piezoelectric click that is generated by your every movement, the energy doesn't have to swim heavily or slowly through your body. Instead, it simply jumps effortlessly from one molecule to another, moving almost at the incredible speed of light throughout your entire system. And here's an explanation so you can easily understand it. That's why, when you're walking down the street and you stumble, you're able to react before your brain even has time to process it. And it's not magic. It's simply your biological fiber optics working at full capacity. But of course, the overall operational efficiency of this complex network is actually heavily influenced by the specific characteristics of your immediate physical environment. In other words, it depends entirely on your precise geographical location and surroundings. If you are lucky enough to be moving directly under the bright, warm glow of the sun, then you are in the ideal scenario. Think of the sun's photons as a true quantum lubricant, and while your movement generates the electron, sunlight, what it does is it directly takes care of organizing it within your water network. It's the optimal situation, the perfect balance. You generate the charge and the sun brings the order. In short, it's maximum efficiency with no extra effort. This is the ideal situation, but obviously not all of us live under those circumstances. What happens if you're in a cold place, if you live somewhere cold, cloudy, and without sun? Well, that's where the survival hack comes in, and the purpose of this video, which, by the way, many of you had requested. Alright then. Since you don't have the support of external photons, it's up to you to be your own sun. Yes, you. And you will see you're truly going to be quite surprised. Because when you perform deep, intense muscular exercise, and you do it specifically in the cold, what you're actually doing is generating a massive amount of internal infrared radiation deep inside your body. In this way, you are structuring your internal water, starting from the very heart of your mitochondria and moving outward. Cold, combined with exercise, is a super demanding teacher because it forces you to raise your voltage so your machinery doesn't freeze. But of course, you don't always feel like it, nor can you do it at just any time. And I'm referring to those hours when you get stuck in a chair in front of the computer, in front of the television, playing a game of chess or reading a book. What happens then? Well, your fascia sticks together, becomes rigid, and dehydrates. And that water, that structured and ordered water you had, becomes liquid and chaotic again. You're probably familiar with that sensation of brain fog when you get up after sitting for hours, and it's not tiredness, it's a lack of conductivity. Your network has simply gone down. Listen closely to this because it's fundamental. Pay attention if you're watching me and think that this voltage thing doesn't apply to you, because you might be of an advanced age. Or because your mobility is limited. You're completely mistaken. Your engineering is exactly the same. You don't need to be an athlete for your lighter to work. For an older person, simply standing up slowly with careful control, stretching your arms high toward the ceiling, or gently massaging your hands with a certain amount of firm pressure is already more than enough to be generating that important piezoelectric click within the body. Keep that in mind. Even if you're just sitting down quietly, simply tensing up, and then slowly relaxing the various muscles in your legs, or perhaps making small steady ankle rotations while you are sitting there, is very much like carefully winding a fine precision watch to keep it running perfectly. The intensity of the movement doesn't matter. You don't have to be an Olympic champion. What matters is the intention behind the pressure. And for your fascia, that small gesture is the necessary maintenance to keep the water in your cells from stagnating and your mind clear. Your cathedral, believe it or not, doesn't close because of age, it closes from lack of use. So keep that spark alive, even if it's just with subtle movements, because you'll see the results. Besides, it's your birthright to keep your voltage high. And that's why, as you can see, I'm not asking you to go to the gym or 3 times a week or every half hour or anything like that. What I'm asking you to do is preventive maintenance, which is 2 minutes of micro stretching, some bouncing, or a few twists. It's not exercise, it's simply avoiding that the click of your lighter stops, because remember this: if there's no pressure, there's no spark. And if there's no spark, the lights in your cathedral simply go out. And now, having explained the above, I invite you to pay special attention, because here, in what I'm about to tell you, now is where many people fail. You see, it's useless that you've become a magnificent generator of flawless energy with your movement and your fascia if your system doesn't have a ground leak. Surely you've noticed at home that outlets have 3 prongs or 2 terminals and a little metal plate. Well, the third one, the one in the middle, is the ground connection, the ground or grounding connection. And it's there for safety, because if there's an excess of energy or a short circuit, that surplus electricity needs to shoot down into the ground so that the device doesn't explode, or so you don't get a shock or a short circuit doesn't happen and your house catches fire. Well, it is exactly the same kind of thing that happens inside your own house every single day. This very same process happens within your body as well. To make this concept much easier for you to understand, in the complex world of biophysics, a positive charge, which is specifically referring to protons, is very much like the thick smoke or the industrial waste produced by a large factory when it is constantly running at full capacity. If that positive charge builds up and isn't discharged, it becomes acidic. It creates a lot of internal tension and ultimately leads to the oxidation of the rest of your components. Now, this specific process is what medical doctors call inflammation, but for our purposes, you and I are going to refer to it simply as charge saturation. On the other hand, negative electrical charge, which is specifically composed of electrons, serves as a soothing and restorative balm. It's like the firefighter who puts out the fire. And this is where our mother comes in, nature. You see, the Earth, that is, the very planet we live on, is literally a giant inexhaustible battery that is constantly overflowing with an abundance of electrons. In other words, it provides that essential negative charge that our bodies need so much. This massive reservoir of energy is always right beneath our feet, just waiting for us to connect. The Earth itself is actually the most powerful and effective antioxidant that we could ever have at our complete disposal. And what's more, it's free. And by this I mean that while, for example, a common nutrient like vitamin C has to be slowly digested and processed by your body, the free electron from the Earth, on the other hand, enters your entire system almost instantly at the speed of light and effectively neutralizes the positive smoke of chronic inflammation throughout your tissues. And this, it's truly an instant electrical process. But, as always, there are problems to overcome. In our modern lives, we have a very clear design problem. We constantly live in what is known as a Faraday cage. And here, let's make a brief digression to talk about Michael Faraday, who was a genius of 19th century physics. He was born in the south of London in 1791 and is considered one of the greatest geniuses in the history of science. And not just because of his discoveries, but above all, because of how he arrived at them. We could say, when talking about Faraday, that he is the father of modern electricity. And, among many other things, for example, he discovered electromagnetic induction. But we're not going to dwell on that. I just wanted to pay him a small tribute. Today, let's talk about what is known as the Faraday cage. Michael Faraday famously demonstrated that an external electric field simply cannot penetrate a hollow conductor. To make this concept even clearer, he discovered that if you step inside a large metal box, electrical signals remain on the outside surface and cannot pass through to the interior. This phenomenon creates what we now call a protective shield against incoming electromagnetic interference. And it turns out we've done the opposite. That is to say, we are inside that box. We've locked ourselves inside boxes of concrete and glass that end up isolating us from the good energy of the Earth, while at the same time they trap inside all the noise from the devices that surround us. And I'm going to give you a very specific and very silly example. Your shoes with rubber soles are the perfect insulator. They separate you from the ground, they separate you from the Earth, as if you were a plastic-coated wire. And meanwhile, you live surrounded by routers, screens, cables, and power towers that emit everything we call static stress. Just think of them as thousands of tiny balls of positive charge that are constantly hitting your body. And now remember what I was telling you. If you don't touch the Earth, that positive charge has nowhere to go, it stays. It gradually builds up and accumulates deep within the layers of your skin and tissues, and eventually begins the process of melting your delicate liquid crystal structure. It's a real drama. Do you remember the structured water H3O2 I was talking about a while ago? Well, it turns out that perfect order needs electrons to stay together. And when static stress bombards you, it steals the electrons from your water. The crystal collapses and turns into ordinary liquid chaotic water. You're simply losing your internal battery due to pure self-isolation. Well, now you know that you're charged with static and that your rubber shoes prevent you from releasing it. And just as you've understood how, the huge buildings we often have to live in, also keep us from being able to discharge protons and recharge electrons. So, to get practical, I'm going to suggest a series of simple rescue maneuvers, and they really are very simple. The first one, the high-fidelity reset. That's what I call it, the hug of the planet. And the simplest thing you can do is just find natural ground, take off your shoes and walk barefoot on damp grass, or if you're near the sea, on the sand at the beach. And you might ask me, why does it have to be damp? Well, it's very simple, because salt water or moisture are like superhighways for electrons. In just 10 minutes, something magical happens that in engineering we call equipotentiality. Your voltage simply equalizes with that of the Earth, and it is almost as if the entire planet, just as I was mentioning before, gives you a powerful, soothing electric hug that completely sweeps away all of that lingering inflammation smoke and fully recharges your internal cellular water battery. The second is the leak in the apartment, which is the faucet trick. And you might say, come on, Jose Maria, I live on the 12th floor in the middle of the city and I don't have a beach or a garden. Well, don't worry, because your home usually has a safety net. On one hand, there are the copper pipes, the heating system, or the metal faucet itself from the installation. Yes, of course, this works if the plumbing installation is from the old days and is physically connected to the building's ground. Because if the faucet is connected by iron pipes and the radiator is also metal, touching them for a few minutes will help you discharge this static electricity. But if you are not completely sure that your building's electrical installations will allow you to achieve your goal, and you want to go a step further, nowadays, since your building will have that third hole for the ground connection, there are grounding mats available that connect directly to the ground terminal of your outlet. And this is, quite literally, the process of running a long grounding cable out through the window, so that your entire body can finally and electrically begin to breathe. And listen to me, I highly recommend it. Strongly. Because keep in mind that if you don't discharge that static electricity, the cement of your cathedral will never set. You'll be trying to build on a structure that simply shakes from the jolts. Well, now we already have the energy of movement. Remember the example of the lighter they showed you, and we have the ground connection so the system doesn't burn out. But we're still missing something. The question is, where does the force come from that allows water to organize itself and not just spill everywhere? Well, right now I am going to tell you all about this mysterious and invisible fuel. Dr. Gerald Pollack discovered, thank you. He discovered many things, but among them, something surprising. It turns out that our cellular water eats light. Yes, just as you heard, it eats light. But don't imagine that it eats an entire rainbow, because it's very selective. What it does is set a motor in motion that gets your water working. And this is what we know as near infrared. I'm sure you know about it or have heard of it, but what is it in case you haven't heard of it? Let me give you an example. I'm sure at some point you've been in front of a fireplace or a wood stove. So when you're there, you feel a warmth that not only touches your skin but seems to warm your bones from the inside. Well, that's exactly it. That's infrared. It's not just a bit of warmth, it hides a very special vibration. And that vibration, so you understand me, is like the rhythm of an invisible metronome. Look, to give you a simple example, think of the water molecules in your body as if they were a group of people in a plaza, each one moving in their own way, bumping into each other, some going forward, others going backward, and with no apparent order. That's vibration. That's ordinary water, chaotic water, but suddenly music with a very distinct rhythm starts playing, a drum that vibrates at an exact frequency. And what happens then? Well, people, almost without even realizing it, naturally start keeping time with the steady beat of the drum. They begin to coordinate their movements perfectly. In this sense, near-infrared is exactly like that rhythmic drum. When that light enters your body, because yes, infrared passes through your skin and muscles as if they were made of glass, and it makes the water molecules simply start to vibrate in resonance. And look, in engineering, resonance is something incredibly powerful. This is what allows a soprano to break a crystal glass with her voice. And she doesn't do it with the strength of her lungs. She does it because she's able to find the exact vibration that makes the molecules in the glass move together. Until something new happens. I'm sure you didn't know this. Well, in your body, that infrared music causes the water molecules to stop colliding and start linking together, almost as if they were holding hands, until they form the hexagonal structure of the liquid crystal we've talked so much about. Notice the importance of infrared. And without that vibration, no matter how much you move or how much earth you touch, your molecules, they were missing the conductor to tell them how to sit down and work. The infrared. What it does is expand your layer of structured water. And the more rhythm or the more infrared they receive, the more molecules join the dance and the bigger that protective shield becomes, which surrounds your cells. It is effectively as if you were completely recharging your internal biological battery just by simply allowing that gentle, resonant vibration to flow deeply through your entire body. And you see, the most beautiful thing about all this is that you don't need to understand the mathematical formula because you feel it yourself naturally and your body knows it. That is exactly why when the warm afternoon sun hits you, or you sit directly in front of the glowing embers, or spend some quiet time in a sauna, you feel that sense of deep, lasting peace. But it's not just that you're warm, it's that your operating system has just found its frequency, its tuning. And all your parts are finally vibrating in unison, aligning themselves, and as they align, something incredible happens. That water crystal expands and starts to expel everything that shouldn't be there. Toxins, heavy metals, cellular waste. Notice how important this is. It's as if the water, when it puts on this gala outfit, simply throws out of the room those guests it sees have arrived dirty and poorly dressed. Well, with this, I've just given you 3 paths that, as you can understand, work anywhere and in any climate. If you live where the sun doesn't come out, don't give up, because red light panels or infrared saunas are your life insurance. And they are like an artificial sun that gives your water the order to organize itself when the sky is gray. Without this vibrational boost, your voltage drops and disease finds the door wide open. Second, the dawn window. If you're lucky enough to see the sunrise, go out to meet it. Dawn light is a gift from nature because you see, it has a lot of infrared, which is what organizes, and almost no ultraviolet, which is what burns. And that's the moment to pre-charge your battery. And finally, there's the path you can use anywhere, which is what I call the secret of the fireplace. I would go so far as to suggest that this is an ancient and deeply hidden secret, and it is certainly no mere coincidence that we become mesmerized whenever we gaze intently at the dancing flames in the fire. Because what we're actually doing is receiving a massive dose of long-wave infrared, which is an energy that penetrates deeply and even structures the water in your brain. This is truly the purest and most profound connection to the ancient energy that originally made us human. Well, at this point, I hope you have understood it and that it's once and for all because you've seen that it's very simple. You're no longer a victim of the thermometer, nor of the humidity in your city, nor of the lack of sunlight in the postal code where you live. By understanding and applying the laws of pressure, earth, and light, you have simply stopped being a passive observer. You wait for someone else to fix it from the outside instead of becoming the chief engineer of your own biology. As Ivan Illich used to say, you have regained your autonomy. You have learned that your movement generates electrons through piezoelectricity. That the earth is your power outlet to clear away inflammatory noise. And that infrared is the conductor that brings order to the chaos of your molecules. The cathedral is finished on the outside. The architecture is exceptionally robust and solid. It is remarkably resilient in its design, and above all, it is completely and independently sovereign. You have built a fortress capable of sustaining a voltage between -70 millivolts and -90 millivolts. And I want you to understand what this means, because now you have a structure that does not collapse. Even if outside the snowstorm rages or the asphalt is burning under the sun. But pay attention, listen, because this is also where most people stop and where we are going to take the definitive step. Because an empty cathedral, no matter how perfect its geometry, is really just cold stone. And for there to be real life, for there to be purpose, and for there to be light in the stained glass windows, we need to answer the most important question of all. What is it for? All this voltage. Why? Have we gone to the trouble of reconstructing every mineral cable and every water crystal? Well, you see, we haven't done it just so that you simply don't feel any pain. We've done it because voltage is the foundation of your freedom. In the next video, which will be the last in this reconstruction series, we're going to see how that surplus of energy you've learned to retain today is what allows you to stop being a puppet of your impulses and become the master of your own destiny. I always talk to you about human dignity, and this is the most important thing. We're going to talk about biology, about freedom, and about how a high voltage is the only real way to keep yourself standing, your dignity upright. The reconstruction is ready, the hardware is set. Now get ready, because we're going to learn how to inhabit the cathedral and seat the king on his throne. Don't wait for the weather outside to change. Change the voltage inside yourself. And what if this journey through the Iron Triangle, thank you, has helped you understand that your health lies in your knowledge and not in your geography? Would you do me a big favor and share it? Help me make sure no one else feels like a prisoner of their environment, and that everyone can reclaim the spark that rightfully belongs to them. You already know what I always tell you. Go ahead, always forward, and I'll read your comments. Thank you very much.